Typing is actually exhausting. It's unbelievable. It's actually I, I, too much typing. Now I'm listening to myself. Shut up, puss. Shut up. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. Okay. So where was I? So there's a uh, so weird to explain. Um, it's like there's two different structures, right? There's two different types of structures. Um, let's say the one is always linear, right? This is like geometry, right? For this kind of stuff. Again, it's so weird to explain because you have parts of the form that flow around the volume or the direction. Again, it's dumb, it's stupid. It's actually stupid. So the leg, the leg structure itself from the profile, right, from the front, where you can pretend it's the cylinder, right, the front, to encompass all this detail, right? I need at least 1, 2, 3, 4 points that I can see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. If I add what I don't see, I have 2, 2, 2, 2. I have a bunch more. So I have an identifiable top plane. I have identifiable hybrids. This is the hybrid, right? So to illustrate this, I have a top plane. I have my hybrid, and then I have a side, and I have a side hybrid, and I have a bottom plane, right? This is like the geometry I work with because it kind of encompasses enough detail to pretend it's round, right? Right. So when I in my brain, right, when I see this, I have it's like rain, right? It's like rain. I have these weird worms raining down from the sky, right? And I show you what they don't do, right? The idea is to create something three-dimensionally, and this is always the intent. It's like I can't get away from this, right? Like any sort of thing that I do, like in my science, in my adjustments, in my contemplations of stuff in geometry and lines and angles, is to get there, like to understand how this works, right? So what they don't do is they don't really go straight through because I know the thing has a three-dimensional form. So let's assume we have, and I can't even draw this. 1 second, I've got to contemplate more geometry. Let's say I have a box standing on its tip, right, on the corner. So the raindrop, the worm, would touch its corner and then basically slide off in all of these directions, right? Because it has to flow into the space. So again, so weird. So when you have a sphere, right, and you touch its top, right, and the worm touches the most top point. There's technically there isn't one, but there is one. The worms would basically float around the surface, right? If I stick with the geometry, right, I have 1, 2. This one goes back, and I have 2 to the side. So 1 to the side. This is the general 4-axis, right? You have north, south, west, east. This is basic, right? If you go nuts, you have 4 more, which again, this is more complex geometry. It's very similar to what I had before, where I have identifiable sides and hybrids. It is very similar. And all of this is going away from the box, right? So what happens is I have a very linear, more or less kind of generic structure, which still I have to visualize the sides, right? Like top planes, side planes, my hybrids, if applicable, or if they're available, I don't know. They're all occupied. So to show it's not this, right? It can't be completely flat. So what I have is I have top planes, I have hybrids, top planes, front planes, side planes, hybrids, weirdness, right? And it's all identifiable. Now when I do this with the leg, it's basically very simple because what I pretend is I have a very basic structure. A very, very basic structure. And they are all it's what I call a it's not a is it perspective it's a projection. So I have a cylinder in this particular perspective. This is the top plane, meaning if this is the cylinder and this is me, I see the top plane, right? If I'm in this location, I don't see the top plane, and the cylinder basically look like this, right? Less top plane, but I'm higher above. So the information that I take, and I talked about this the other day, right? I take the information available and I protrude it down. I move it down along the direction, right? So what I do is I overlay this basic information to all the kind of parts, and I'm projecting. Okay, it is the perspective projection. I overlay the same information over this weird shape. It's forcing the perspective like inside the shape, right? It's basically not this anymore, right? It's not flat, right? It's a weird looking peanut. That is actually the happiest peanut I've seen. So again, what I do is I take the circle information, right? Like the curve. If I have a cylinder that I see more from the top, right? The curve goes down, and this is what I look at. I cut the circle, and I have the circle axis, and then I do this in my brain, right? If I have a circle, part of the curve goes up. This is up, and this is down. So where does the curve go? When I am above the thing, so the curve goes down, right? I'm up top, and the curve goes down. This is what I do. I curve down, 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 and I'm forcing this peanut into the perspective of the cylinder. Now the peanut is different because let's say the peanut is basically it has a head. It's round, right? So again, I pretend my thing is round, and I have basically a square top plane. That is what I pretend. And yet the plane is like a tissue or like a piece of paper, and it's folding across the surface, so it has to curve, right? Either like this, otherwise you still have your 4 points. You need your 4 points, right? So basically what I would do is I have this contour which separates the side, and then I have this guy separates the front, and in the middle this guy is my hybrid. This is like the easy process, because when you have more complex anatomy, and it's like a general term, right? Anatomy is complex. You basically have a really complex shape, right? And this line is so confusing. When you have your normal box and you look at it from this side, right? This point is basically on this side, right? And this point is basically right there. So there's my initial plane, just to know where am I, right? So I can easily draw a contour completely through to separate the top from the front. And this is basically the same thing when I draw a box and have nothing inside. It's empty. So there's my first contour, and there's one, and there's one. It separates the sides, right? So then again, compared to this kind of linear approach, right? All the lines go either horizontally or vertically. There's no real diagonals, right? Because let's say I have a sausage coming from the back, and this is something the muscles do, right? They flow across the cylinder. They don't just flow across the cylinder in 2 dimensions, they flow across the volume, right? Now let's say I have a cylinder running on this curve, right? Which is basically like a sausage. It goes up and down, and it's like a hose, like a garden hose, right? And it curves in all weird axes. And you have to know how to curve to make it actually show that this thing is like a 3D sausage, right? So that it actually looks like there is a cylinder as its like main body, kind of, how do you say this? So it shouldn't be a two-dimensional shape. That is the point. It has to be three-dimensional, right? Point being is, when you have your anatomy and basically you have this complex structure, and this it already starts, right? I have to pull this out, right? Like this, to show this kind of piece of the anatomy. Actually, again, here's the example between the cylinder and the actual form. If this is a cylinder, you can go away, few down, go away. So the cylinder will always do this, right? It follows a very linear, normal kind of structure. The form itself, the complexity of the form, and this is where you have one element which goes X, Y, Z, right? You have then more elements which goes X, Y, Z, 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 and you have all of these hybrid planes. And then from this, you basically want to go into 3 dimensions, and you have to 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z to pull this into space. Now again, you have all of these points, they basically connect. Now what if these points are not linear, but they basically sit on a curve, right? And again, it's like, how do you move this kind of zigzag into space, right? Because you have to move it along sections or your contour lines. So again, the complexity is basically, I have a top plane, the top element, and this is where basically every little thing, every little potato, if turned into 3D geometry, just like the box. And this is, it's like let's look at this. Is very simple, because there is a top plane, right? There's a side plane, and there's a front plane. This is by 3 dimensions, right? I have X, Y, Z. Every plane has its own dimensions, or every dimension has its own plane, so it's identifiable. I have a side plane, I have a top plane. 1, 2, 3. It is identifiable. If I paint this, right, you would understand where the light comes from and how round the potato is. If this is, again, cylindrical projection, all I really do is I curve the lines through. I can have another contour line to separate the front, the top, my hybrid, the bottom. It's not even a hybrid. Okay, this is a weird potato. So again, I'm forcing a bottom plane. It's just, but it's the same principle: top plane, bottom plane, front plane, side plane, and it's all that, right? So again, every element has its own dimensionality, right? And this is where every line is basically, it has to be a stepping stone, right? Between, it doesn't just go through, but it goes forward, backward, down, forward, backward, down. Or something like it moves through the dimensionality. It's like a thing that I try to remember in my brain. So when I have, I have all of these lines. It's like 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines. What I actually have, instead of just 1 line, 2 line, 3 lines, and between the line, right, depending on how I connect these, I know I have a box, right? And then I have this happening. And it's the same step by step effect, right? It goes up, down, forward, left, right, up, down, right? Very similar to this, right? It's like it moves in transitions. In this case, it technically comes closer to me. So if I move this form towards infinity, it should eventually pass my face, right? Like it should like pass through my visual field in terms of, if this is me and the form, it has to eventually pass my visual field, right? So back to the leg. So I would have all of these weird elements. And now this is where things get really tricky, because there is a dynamic nature to this anatomy stuff. Where when I have a cylinder, right, I have these contour lines. They are straight and they just go down. When I have a leg, the leg itself is curved, right? So it has actual volume. It's like the way my brain had to figure this out, because I can't run my contour lines linear so that I see the entire plane, but I have to split this, right, where the entire plane is basically curved behind the volume, right? It continues behind the leg, right? To just show it's like something is happening to the structure. And I know that some muscles, they go from this point to basically this point, and we know this, right? You know this, right? You can don't touch your leg, but it goes places. It goes across, it goes around, and it's this guy. It goes from there and it goes all the way around. And then basically there's a potato. There's the kneecap. And from this point, this weird looking thing, it continues along the shin bone, right? And this goes in, and there's multiple layers, and then you have the calf, you have like bones, and there's stuff, and this goes down. And again, this thing going down is also curved. If I have a normal cylinder, and I pretend there is a straight kind of rigid axis going through, and I just say now it is curved, right? So it curves to the side and outwards, and then it's skinny at the bottom, right? And then still like leading form, right? It's such a weird concept to show where does it go, right? Because like I don't know, for my intentions, for what I want to do, it is very important to understand this. Where like it's not like I knew this kind of stuff when I was just learning at the beginning, you know. So there is a like every curve has its own apex, right? Like the point that stands out the most. Sometimes when you have your weird looking potato, it curves to the side, and this is like the direction of this apex. It can't always go up space, and this again is horizontal and vertical. It's very geometric and very rigid. What actually happens is it has a dynamic to it, so it doesn't really go on the horizontal or the vertical, right? So it's so weird. Per element, I'm trying to understand where does it face, where does it point, right? So the cylinder itself in its normal state, this is the most top point, right? It's not there, right? But it's there, like the top edge, right? And I say it's there because I know the perspective is this, right? If I have a different cylinder, for example, and I just draw it like this, I know this would be the bottom, and I pretend it is, right? So um, I'm getting wait. Um, I'm losing my strings of thought. They all get tangled up. Okay, there we go. It came back to me. So when I have my progression, this progression is linear geometric between 2 points. You can understand where does it go by axis, right? It doesn't okay. So the organic transition is basically the curve. You can't see where it goes, right? It goes both axes. Does it go to the side? Does it go down? And I like in my brain, when I analyze form, I analyze 3D-ness on a 2D projection, this is my drawing, right? So like eventually you kind of go mad because you have to, or if there is a way, if there is a way, right? You kind of go mad because you have to like think think so weird and find connections where usually are none, right? Gotta copy this link. Okay. again, for where does it go in space? When I have my points, right? And let's say if I have a dynamic kind of form, these points face outwards because they belong to this plane. What I don't do is basically go linear. So now when I have my form like this, and I know I have these edges, this is where the geometry goes, right? It follows the grid. But for the roundness, for actually knowing, and this point basically follows all the way through as this contour, right? It's like the last edge that I can see from this kind of angle, right? I can't see beyond it, and it has to curve, right? So the direction of this edge is not completely up. Excuse me, but it has to face to the side. Like, I can still make it go up, right? Like completely linear, but I can't. So it has to go up. The first there has to be an edge and a plane, which is basically this. So all of these contour lines, right? They have basically a property, and the property is that I would decide where's my volume, so I can say between these points I have a circular or basically a cylindrical volume. I can say between two lines I have cylindrical volume. So basically it's round, right? And then again, maybe I don't have an arc or curve like this where it's easy to see it goes up, right? Maybe I have something like this. It curves to the side, or maybe it's just like weirdly shifted. And this is like it's like an airplane wing where you have aerodynamics and the wind and flows and stuff like this. But it's irrelevant in this case. But I mean I like curves, right? So what I'm basically doing is I'm manipulating the curve where it does something like this, right? Because the anatomy can do this. The anatomy shifts in weird ways. And at first I have to understand how to not limit my anatomy to a very geometric structure. And this again is the difficulty when I have, let's say, this is the plane that I follow. This is the plane. And instead of being basically a flat plane, it has this volume property, right? Which ultimately means it has volume, meaning it's 3D. Therefore, it has to have at least two planes to separate the front from the top from the side, the something from the something else. And it's basically, I have one side plane from the box, and I have this plane from the box. What I have is basically this, right? This is the plane that I have. If it has dimensionality, it has to have a body. Right? If it does have three-dimensionality, it has to have a front body, and then it creates this natural hybrid, right? Because what I don't do in this case, I can't do this. Like this again is the choice between how do I build my geometry, right? And I know this kind of stuff from 3D modeling. And there are kind of operations that you can apply to your geometry where this happens. In some cases, this would also split. Like it's weird, right? And you can then say, basically, you can move this new element like a door. You can swing it forward or swing it backward, so it attaches itself more to the side or the front, which it's like a door, right? It rotates around this kind of stuff. So again, there's many interesting settings to play with. So the property again is what I can't do is basically go flat, because I know the entire thing has more dimensionality. But this is fine, right? And I can see the transition between basically this being the top, and then look at the transition of this angle. Like it slowly flows around, right? Like this is how it goes in, and this is how it goes out. This is in. This is out. Now again, when we have things in different positions in this, it's like it doesn't really change much. And still, I have to show this thing basically. If I pretend the body is continuous, and there are many different elements that I basically pass by, right? And I'd say there's a boop, right? So this would be the top plane. This is hybrid. This is side plane. There is another hybrid. This again is the side plane. And then this would be the front part of the hip. From this, basically on the side, I have this guy flowing across the top, and then it goes to the side. It is like a ribbon, yes. It is very much like the ribbon. So again, I can and I should go away. Like the first step, doing this is fine. Complexity of structure is fine. The first basic step is understand your structure and then understand the simplicity of basically the volume projection. This is the easiest thing. And you can have any sort of complex structure. Adding volumetrics is like adding the volume, adding the 3D is like it does something in my brain where I know how important it is and I know how easy it is to understand a basic structure and then manipulate the structure, as opposed to understanding none and trying to force manipulation of something I don't understand. It's like it doesn't work, you know? So doing this gives me the basic understanding, and I can still pretend that I just take this angle and run it through. What I know is there has to be a change between the angle that goes in and the angle that goes out. And between these points, I have basically, it's like the description of a transition of form in space, basically a form surface. And it is visualized how it moves. So basically, it doesn't really move, but how it sits in space. What it does, it visualizes the space there. You know, so there's a box on my side, and there's another box on my side, and this is very select. What I have in between is basically the transition. This is how it goes in or out, and this is how it goes in or out. In between, I have basically this happening, where this line slowly transitions into this other angle. Right? If I have this box and I have another box, and then another box is suddenly above me, and then it's logical to build a bridge or a connection to the other side and have another top, right? So what would happen is basically I have another transition between this guy and then this guy, and then I meet this guy, and yep, I meet this guy, and I go back, right? And I slowly transition. And this, all this really does is visualize like my visual field. Like in this weird looking instance, all I have is boxes. But I do have, instead of having like separate points, I built the surface. Right? Right. So again, I use this kind of, you know, I know I have the top, so there's my perspective. And when I go down, or basically in terms of boxes, this line or this line is the angle that I need. Basically, it's the wrong way, like this. So, right? This is how I start. I take this thing and I project it onto my leg, and I know I have to change because the ribbon that I'm drawing is transitioning from the side plane to the top plane. But also, now comes the funky part, it is transitioning through my visual field. Now you have an element that has to basically, you have one factor, one variant that you can change, and it has to show the surface changing and the surface change within perspective space. This is like looking at the logic. How could this work? So still, I have to basically show the transition of this element. Basically, if I have the top and then I see less top, basically the bottom, there's the transition. So this still goes down, this goes up, and the cylinder continues. So what happens if this ribbon goes all the way? Instead, it transitions across the surface, right? Basically, this is a funny example actually. because what this does, if it continues in its motion something nature, right? It continues in forms of a spiral because it still transitions along the cylinder. So it is kind of a spiral, but it's not linear, but it has at least one body. And I don't want to, so there's a ribbon. It actually works. So it's magical, right? And I have to or want to show the transition through the visual field, which ultimately is a very, very, very tricky thing to do. But again, let's go back. So I have to have, and again, I have to transition to the side. And then again, I have to transition along these certain markers to hold the perspective in space, in place. And this is very, very weird stuff, especially if you have a torso. And then you have the hips, and you kind of see the cylinder of the leg like a little bit from the bottom, right? There's your chin gap, so you see it from the bottom. And then if we have this kind of space, the leg is seen from the top. The foot is also seen from the top, and the ground plane is also seen from the top. Right? Top. Eventually there is a barrier, and this is where the eye level horizon exists. So between this goes down, this goes down, this goes down, this goes down, and then it goes up because it's above me. And by up mean it's like it's the same line, but basically the line itself from the point where I start the line goes up and to the side. Right? When I start at the other point, the line goes down, but still I can draw both perspectives. This is the bottom plane. If I use different lines, I suddenly have the top line and the other, like, but it goes a different way, right? So I look for how I draw the lines is basically the madness that I have to endure. Usually people don't really pay attention to how they draw, like from the point, the direction itself, it affects my reading direction, right? So ultimately, when I have a single plane, the plane goes this way, the plane goes also this way, and this is where I try to understand the direction of the surface, right? If I have a surface, again, I'm getting distracted. The direction of the surface point goes up. The direction of this surface point goes to the side. It doesn't go up, but it faces to the side. Right? If I have a complete circle, it's like the sun, right? It has all these sparks and they all face different directions. I'm confusing myself. So again, I would have a very normal geometric structure, and this is the stuff that I would draw first and learn. This is going dynamic without knowing and basically maintaining volume. That is kind of the key. When you just draw, right? You have this line, and then you have anatomy, and you kind of have to pretend it is a volume. And it seems natural to help myself and help my brain to understand there is stuff between the lines, and this is what I have to visualize. And there is a surface, a kind of like the skin surface, right? It goes around the form. It builds a potato, and it is 3D. Logic is magical. So again, I can still go through flat, and this is where you have to help your brain. You have to help your brain. But the point is knowing how to do this. There is a transition between the different planes and between the different elements and between how they flow, because I have a geometric structure that just does this, right? It goes up and it goes basically around, and it's fine for the volume. This is geometry, right? The organic structure, it basically curves itself, right? It flows around itself. I don't know, but it goes places. So the planes that I've drawn on the side are dynamic because they vanish, right? They vanish behind the volume of the sphere. So if there is a plane, there's 2 points, and suddenly it becomes 1, which again is a triangle. If you want to think about it this way, what happens is the plane itself continues on the other side and still forms the plane. So what I have is like a sheet of metal. And what I do is I bend and twist this sheet of metal to follow the surface, right? And I should, make it flow this way. And then what happens if I take these 2 points and move them forward? Like the entire surface would follow. So that between these points now exists a completely different space, as opposed to just having, it's like take a piece of paper and hold it tight and you can see it flop over. Right? And again, this is like my brain trying to understand how to manipulate form. And I'm working with basically the surface of all of these ribbons. There's one. Right? What happens if I take this piece of the ribbon and I want to have a completely different organic form? Right? And this is like I go off of my base structure. It starts with the plane. It is a grid in my brain. It rhymes, holy poop. But it has dimensionality. And between these points, I have my lines, or the contours, which ultimately are these. And they separate the planes, right? So point, line, between this, I have the space. And the space is filled with the plane. The plane has a surface. Right now, the plane is empty, so I have to fill it. And this is where I hatch. The surface itself changes, right? Just like what is it? The ribbon that basically goes around the surface of the lake, or basically whatever it does. It goes places like Spider-Man. So it kind of starts at the side and then it overlaps and it sits on the side. This one's tricky, but it sits on the side and then it has to transition to the top. And this is like my brain goes wild showing this transition. And even from the back, I want to know how to surface if there is something else, right? And even though it's like it overshoots, right? So then again, I can pretend it basically curves itself back around, and then it ends, right? It has 2 lines that flow to 1. But what does it mean? It comes back on the other side. To then again, to show that it comes back on the other side. And of course the leg has to continue, go this way. It's a snake. It has, no, I can't even draw teeth. There you go. So, to complete the illusion, all I can really do is add some kind of shadow to pretend there's light, and this thing, like my floating sausage, is above the ribbon. And this just is like an extra kind of effect. What I should also do is basically this, remove this, because the ribbon is in front. And then if I do pretend there's light, I should darken this because it is the bottom plane. And you can see how the illusion basically goes from having a bunch of lines to something completely different, because there's a purpose to what is being done, or what is being something, right? And ultimately I should have the shading flow across from this ribbon. So occlusion happening. This is, it's like inaccurate, but I get the idea of this thing being more 3D than it was for 5 minutes. And I should actually, like, this one is too flat, so it should go right and then continue. Otherwise, it goes this way. Just what I'm looking at there is it's too flat. It goes too straight between these points. So what I would do, I basically manipulate this entire thing. I follow the curvature of the leg. I just pretend. Again, what happens is shading, shadow. This is like I help my brain to understand it's not on the surface of the leg in a different position, because if I continue these lines and I remove this, it looks odd because suddenly it's on the leg, it's on the cylinder, but it's above the cylinder. So there has to be shadow. But again, I'm doing butchering surgery to my thing. So sorting, got a drink, and hold my thoughts. Sorting, managing the amount of information is nuts. Like eventually all you would notice is your struggle, right? It's like, it's so natural. I can clap my hands and I feel very awkward doing this. But the amount of information that we deal with is staggering, and in most cases we are not even aware, right? So all we would do is we do it how we can, and eventually we notice that we don't. So we struggle, and we don't really know why. And in many cases, and this is what I tell you guys, like I feel like it's in many cases, but it's normal for the brain to struggle with this kind of stuff. And it's all I can really tell you. I know how normal it is to struggle because it is like when you actually think about this stuff, what you're trying to do, right? Basically what I intended and what many people want to do when it comes to, you want to draw something two-dimensionally that appears to be magic, to produce the illusion of 3D and still project it on a 2D surface. And this is ultimately the drawing of a box. It is a drawing. It is a two-dimensional drawing that holds enough information and the right kind of information to produce the effect of three-dimensionality on this 2D surface. It is a mind-boggling kind of thing. It's not natural. It's not like, you know. The thing is, people go nuts when they want to paint, right? So painting and shading, they all serve the purpose of visualizing form in its simplicity, right? In its raw basic purpose. What is the purpose, right? It's not like I don't want to show light. I want to show that my thing is dimensional. It's like it has a volume. So I need shading because, form change is value change, and then form change is line change, is angle change. They still go nuts, right? And even then, when it comes to the painter, you have to go with, is it dark, is it bright? And it's all the variables you can't really change. And still understanding the space that you paint is still completely different. And then I can understand, like, it's completely unnecessary to know any of this. You can just use perspective grids and basically learn like everybody else and struggle like everybody else. This sounds fun. That actually sounds fun. Otherwise, you still struggle, but it's different. And I'd rather enjoy the madness of the extraordinary. So again, the simple part of this leg is basic monocle. Cylindrical projection. But it's not so, like, it's something I keep in my brain, right? But to visualize the structure, I go away from the basic cylinder. Yeah, there's different ways. Yes. Like it has to serve a purpose, right? You have to have your intention. Like everybody wants to make different art, right? Not everybody wants to go crazy on the 3D volume kind of stuff like me, you know? That is definitely true. What's up, G's? How things? Got a couple of so basic structure is in my brain, but I do change it to show. And I'm very rusty with this kind of stuff. I've not done legs in months. To show like the dynamic nature of the form, I know it's not geometry. So what it doesn't do is basically go linear straight, right? It has curvature to it, and it has more detail and stuff and things. Let's see. Like I did this naturally, right? You have different elements, and this is just like you have multiple potatoes, and to hold the right information of the form, they receive different projections, right? This gets this one, and this one would get this one, and the other one gets this one, and the one on the top gets something else, right? And I project the cylinder in my brain. I don't draw it, but I have it, and then I manipulate this to suit the form, and I take information that I get from the simple geometry to then like wrap around. It's like tinfoil wrapping a hot potato, right? You have to wrap it around the form to encompass the dynamicness of the form piece, or the anatomy, right? And how it flows around the volume, right? And still maintain the perspective space. And it's completely awkward to have this separated. See the painter artist, like nobody would ever think about this kind of stuff because they don't need it. Like they don't really. It's so I love it. It's so madness completely. Total madness. And still, in this case, or in my case, the line itself is all I have. The line itself can change size, right? It can go bigger, it can go smaller, and it can change angles. That's all I can do, right? Multiple lines connected in the right way. And this is where the magic begins, right? Multiple lines connected in the right way, in the right manner, in the right fashion, net and create the illusion of 3Dness. Now the painter can paint the box, and yet whatever the painter has to paint still has to have its own geometric structure. He may not draw what he paints, but he then would basically go across and find his values. What am I doing? Why is it not painting? Right? He finds his values, right? And still between the values, there is still a structure. Go away. I'm pressing wrong buttons. There is still this. Between the values, you still have the lines. And the lines, like you can see the difference, right? Because if you contemplate the lines, you understand something else. If you don't contemplate the lines, you contemplate your contrast. And still, you can't really like the basic logic is when you can draw it, you can paint it. When you can paint it, you can't really draw it because it's different. It's still like the way painters think, or the way you have to think in shapes that receive the volume. And still, I'd like to understand my structure, right? The box that receives the paint, or basically the space that receives the paint, or anything I would want to paint may have a three-dimensional structure. To understand the structure that I paint, I should do studies, right? And if I want to paint the face, I should start with a drawing. So it's like, oh my god, this is completely contradictory. It's a contradiction. Instead, you're trying to visualize a structure. Learning about the structure can be done in any way. You can draw, you can paint, you can flip-flop, you can backflip, you can draw it in sand, right? You can put it together with pieces of rice. But fundamentally, you have to understand the structure that that you wish to create. May it be flowers or rocks or goats or sheep and um, birds, happy little trees, more flowers, some grass, more rocks and rivers and lakes. Right? If I have this as my base, I can paint this just fine and understand um, like which plane would receive which amounts of light. And this is a fairly dirty structure. And this brings me back to Leo's examples. This is very dirty. This is very dirty because these angles, they go all over the place. This is technically bad. For my visual aesthetic measurements, this is bad. It is a 3 out of 10. Maybe it's a 4 because the volume is fine. When you think about the cylinder surface has a transition. It goes in, it transitions, and it goes around. This is basically the curve, but it goes step by step by step by step by step, depending on how many planes you have, right? So the surface structure itself, it may go across, but it should still have a very clean, defined structure. And I have to admit, I'm very rusty, so I've not drawn legs, and I'm like, the lower leg is fine, and the upper leg is just, I gotta practice this some more. I need more practice. Where's my reference? Otherwise, otherwise just like draw my ribbons, right? So that I can maintain my angles properly, and I can just try this again, see how it works. But when I look at this, right, and say it's bad and it's a 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10, I don't look at anatomy to fix my mistakes. Right? I look at my lines, I look at my angles, I look at the transitions, I look at my structure and figure out, is it all clear and defined and nice and volumetric, and is the flow correct? Is it dynamic enough? Like in terms of like step by step going around the volume and not just zigzag and all over the place. And there is a aesthetic difference, right? When it actually flows like, it's tasteful for the aesthetics. And I'm pretty the knee is weird. Quickly flip this. Any questions? Am I still making sense? Yeah. That's good. Okay, still something is disturbing my volume senses. This should go skinny. There's the name. This should technically go this way. Let's see where this ends up. And my structure, I'm completely changing the structure. It's fine. It's fine. Technically, I should just draw a different leg. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the thighs. I'm basically looking at the insides of the leg. I'm used to looking at the outsides of the leg. So the outsides of the leg is more like this, right? The insides of the leg, they have basically the thighs. So this goes around and then it stands to the side. This kind of element, right? You can basically see it. If I thicken this, that would be the panty triangle. So it's this one, right? This one, basically like so, and not even. It's okay. that was so weird. It looks unhealthy, but you get the point. So drawing the thighs is a particular weird thing. It's just basically when I have the cylinder is fine. So what happens is at one point it has to go to the side, right? So and in this case it goes all the way. So there is the volume would change, right? This is basically, we would see a little bit of butt. This is shadow. This is awkward anatomy. So what I'm looking at is kind of extension instead of having the lines go through. At one point, eventually, they kind of extend one more time to form something like this. So in between, right? And I like the separation though. In between, we have this one. There's a name. This muscle has a name. This guy, right? It sits in between. It goes across the leg, and it attaches itself at the hips. So again, this easy 3D volume identification, verification, visualization. Easy. Section lines, contour lines, yada yada. This kind of stuff. Right? Everything else is stuff. Right? It, like, to me and for my brain, it is a variation. Right? I take an element, I change its variables, and then something else would happen. And any of these planes can still interpret it differently, but I'm trying to unify this in terms of cylindrical things. And then again, instead of having normal curved arcs, right, I have something like this, and it transitions into something else, right? So the structure itself will change, right? And in between, I still have my geometry. I have to have my geometry in some kind of way to show, like, there is a particular kind of complexity that I want to show, but I sometimes go very bare bones and very raw and very, it's just a box, because I have to make it simple to then understand how to make it complex. That's you know, it's like managing your overload. Like, don't eat it all at once, right? Go over. How do you say overcharge, power charge, like slowly? You know, gotta flavor the flavors, taste the flavors. There's a word, more words, sticky words. Actually, like, there are so many things the line can do to visualize organic form, and it's mind-boggling. Like, all these weird little things. Savor, yes, that stuff. Do that stuff. I need more drink. Any questions? Am I still making sense? Okay, let me breathe. Am I still making sense? This is the important part. Am I still? Yes. Am I still there? wherever that may be. This is it's like recapping the entire process. Like, well, I drew some boxes, and then I went completely crazy. But it is this is basically the process. And if anybody, at least the few among you that I know listen to me, you can contemplate this process. Like, contemplate, contemplate. I burped too much. I've aired my belly and I need food. Oh no. Hiccups as well. Burps and hiccups. Any questions? Any questions? Where's Leo? Leo, any questions? It wasn't even that much of a spoiler, but now you have the madness that you wanted. Burp. Oh, somebody ban me. Layering and refinement. Yes, there is a huge gap for interpretation, but in the end, yes. Yes. And refinement is a very interesting term or word for, like, basically whatever you do, right? You would naturally know and realize, do you like it or you don't, right? You either like it or you don't, and then, like, figure out how to fix it, and this is the refinement. Like, understand how to not repeat mistakes. Right? It's basically the short stop towards mastery. And I know how bad I was at school, right? Because it didn't really sink into my brain. I mean, I mean, it's. I would feel better this way because I get like my own sense for responsibility, right? Die Verantwortung. That's good. Jawohl. Um, now I'm fine because I feel like I've been responsible, at least to some degree. Um, Instead of just being silent, like I'm always silent. So special birthday stream is always once a year, right? So now the next 9 months is like is like silent again. Um, but the good thing is it filled the time. It filled the time I needed to at least stream and do something productive and not just draw stupid boxes. But it filled the time nicely so that I can now say, okay, I'm doing a little bit longer and then go back to video games, you know? So, no, it's not going to be 9 months, but it's fine. It's fine. So I can end it in shortly, then go back to video games. Um, and I feel like it's better to do it this way than to just sit there in silence. And I mean, I know myself, and I would definitely not feel as good, right? Knowing I have um, supported the people that supported me with some madness and drawing, and I know you give me money and all the subs, and I mean, I have a Wacom 4 tablet because of you, Leo. So you crazy, you just crazy mother beep beep. Bad words beep. There you go. I am thoroughly addicted to Red Dead Online, Red Dead Redemption 2 Online. It is thoroughly addicting. Like thoroughly unhealthily addicting. Like you can grind if that's your thing. And I remember months ago wanting to have a game where you can just grind and still shoot things and have a little bit progression and stuff. So but it looks fantastic. Like it looks holy potato. The atmosphere, the graphics, the landscapes, the nature, and the animals. It's insane. It's actually insane. Um, like one thing for the amount of detail in this game is like you have more than 100 animals. Like you have like 10, 20 types of birds, right? You have little tiny vermin running around. It's insane. It's actually insane. You have squirrels, you have muskrats and skunks and all sorts of rats. It's actually insane. And there is so basically you hunt, you play cowboy, you can be a bounty hunter, you can do PvP, PvE, and just sell moonshine. Sell moonshine and be a very bad guy. This is actually you can be so mean. You can be so mean. It's actually hilarious. So there's open world events, right? So you ride around on your horse and then suddenly you hear some NPC screaming and they are like being surrounded by crocodiles, right? So usually you kill the crocodiles, you take them on your horse, you finish the mission. So, and I did this once, right? I did this once, and oh my god, I hated the mission so much. Whenever I come across this NPC, I just throw dynamite. Like it's all I do. I just toss dynamite, and it all goes away. It all goes away very quickly. And I'm happy again because I don't have to help the stupid NPC. What's horse in German? Horse is Pferd. 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 Horse. Yeah. Pferd. 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 There is a FPFERD third, I think, if I remember my German language correctly. Yeah, feared. Yeah, fine. Feared. Yeah, it works. It's fine. It's fine. It is a time sink, and it's a good time sink. And then waiting for Cyberpunk to be basically in a working condition, right? In a functioning state. Um, it's good to have something else to play. It's very good to have something else to play. Something I have to admit, and I try to stay clear of most Cyberpunk stuff. Seeing like a car basically glitch through a wall, and you see all of these particles and all of these different elements. So the car basically gets shredded, right? But in terms of, it doesn't really explode since it's not driving, so there's no high octane action going on, and you can actually very much see every every little thing that happens, and it's so fucking awesome, like actually fucking amazing, seeing this car basically drive into the wall, and it's perfectly fine on the one side, and it's completely shredded on the other side. Like it was fantastic. It was fantastic seeing this kind of detail. Yeah, yeah, it's actually crazy. It's crazy sad. It's crazy sad, but um, once it's in a working condition, it's gonna be a hell of an experience. Okay. Okay. The things we want, right? The things we want, and sometimes don't even need, but we still want them anyway. It's like Total Recall, the movie, the alien lady with the three tits. That's just that's how it goes. I mean, yeah, see, making a game that runs in a pandemic, epidemic, quarantine situation is very difficult. Putting dicks on things is very easy compared to keeping your car running, you know? It's very easy. So if your game breaks down, just draw a bunch of. No, don't. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I didn't use the word. I didn't suggest anything. We completely PG free something. I don't even know. I'm definitely looking forward to playing a functioning version. Maybe by the time I indulge myself in a GPU upgrade update, something small, something tiny. Any questions? Am I still making sense? How's the boxes? How's the boxes? I'm wrapping up slowly, guys. I'm stalling. I'm actually playing for time. I'm playing for time since you are not asking any questions, which is fine, and I'm not reminding you. Um, but I can play for time and then look at my stream uptime and say, okay, look how long I streamed, and then I can be very happy and go pick out potato and be lazy. Kappa, 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 kappa. So many burps. Holy moly! I need food. I think the console versions are probably the most buggy from what I heard or saw seen. I'm assuming, though. I'm assuming. I don't know things. I'm not informed. This again is one of the after effects of Reddit online addiction. But it's fine. It's fine. You guys will be fine. You have stuff. What am I saying? Christmas and stuff. Anybody not celebrating? Is a better question. Who's not celebrating Christmas? But I hope you guys will be fine when I'm not live and following my video game addiction. At least for a couple of days. Yes. Video games is good. Drawing is good. More boxes. Holy moly. It's fine. It's fine. Leo, I thank you now for whatever you left in my PayPal, and I've not checked, but I will check after stream and then probably spam you in Twitch Whispers for a bit. Depending on the amount of zeros. There's probably gonna be one, which is fine. Two would be enough. Two is already crazy. Holy shit, you're crazy. Anyway, thank you guys for watching and listening. Stuff and yeah, don't check. I won't. It's actually scary, right? It's actually scary. He left. He said don't check PayPal. That's what he said. That is what he said. No, you guys have a good Christmas. And happy New Year. I can't sing just fine. My voice. Bye everybody. Bye. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for stuff and the gifts and the subs and things and being here and listening to my ramblings and madness and boxes and more boxes, stupid boxes. It is a reoccurring theme that German tongues are weird. Okay, bye everybody, bye. I will definitely be lazy for a couple of days and then eventually just be back streaming, doing my boxes and stuff. So until then, do the practice, do the homeworks, be lazy, eat cake, eat candy, stuff. Bye. 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 Bye.